All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas, and I'm going to be talking with you guys, looking at your DAWs, looking at your projects, and talking about recording. But I just wanted to spend probably now 5 minutes or so just taking you through an example of me having started with a memo and working up through the different sort of phases of writing until it's like a demo, which is still something that I would like pretty much re-perform all of the things, but that's okay. So this was an original demo that I was just kind of playing on my guitar, and this kind of came up. So. Come on, dude. Yep, so warts and all, that was painful for me to share, but probably really good for something. So that was sort of the raw idea. I'm not a guitar player first, just to give myself a little bit of an out. But anyway, that was the idea. But I really liked the melody and I liked the chords that I kind of came up with. I kind of just worked through all of the parts of the song. So the first thing I did was, I'm a music first person, so obviously you'll have heard that there were no words. So what I'll do is I'll work through sort of the structure of the song, and I will basically mumble anything that comes into my head, any sounds that sort of happen, and then those sounds might eventually make their way into words. And it might happen that I write some words and then retroactively figure out what those words mean, and then the bigger picture forms from that. And so that's what happened with the song. So the next sort of phase of this song was to do just that. It was to create a structure and to kind of figure out what is the melody for the whole song, and that came up to this. All right, so that's where that landed. So from that, I got the title of the song, Home Tonight, and I got some words about the streets where I used to know, the woods where I used to play, and from that, I ended up writing the lyrics, and the lyrics ended up being about my old neighborhood where I grew up and the park down the street and the hours that I used to spend with my dog, just walking and thinking about life as a sort of reflective teenager, and that's what the song ended up being about. So then my next phase after that was to sort of capture the words. So I wrote the words down. I won't bother share and reshare, but we'll just play kind of the same segment again, but this is sort of like the first draft of the lyrics. I used to walk where the river was low and hide behind the covered bridge till it turned cold. I knew just how far to go, that I could hear the call to come back home. I used to climb where the tree limbs were bare and watch and wonder how the world is unaware. I was just too young to care, and I would always want to get back there. Looking from the other side, never needed anything to make me feel alive. Living in the world is free, never needed anyone to hold to feel like me. Now I'm looking up the slide, is there anyone that feels like home tonight? Okay, so that was that memo. As I was working through lyrics, those aren't the final lyrics. I probably still don't know the final lyrics yet because I'm still kind of not 100% happy with everything, but I felt like I had the structure, and now after playing it a few times, I'm starting to hear arrangement ideas. So I'm starting to hear what the bass might do. I'm starting to hear what kind of drums I might like. I'm starting to hear some background vocal ideas. I'm also realizing the key is too high. So I'm taking it down a couple notches and playing around with different keys. With Logic, thankfully, makes it very easy to do with even the same guitar track, which is a polyphonic instrument, just to say down 2 half steps, and suddenly you're in a different key, which is really nice. So with sort of like a kit, I think I maybe just use a real basic drum pattern and a bass pattern. So this is like the quote-unquote demo, from which I would now probably start tracking actual musicians or myself replaying things. So here's that. I used to walk where the river was low and hide behind the covered bridge till it turned cold. I knew just how far to go, that I could hear the call to come back home. I used to climb where the tree limbs were bare and watch and wonder how the world was unaware. I was just too young to care. Now I only want to get back there. Looking from the other side, I never needed anything to make me feel alive. And I was all that I would be, never needed anyone to hold to feel like me. And now with every passerby, I'm looking for the one that feels like home tonight. So on and so forth. So that's where it landed for now. I've got some things still to figure out about it, but that's kind of the process that I go through. I don't necessarily always bring my voice memo into a DAW and do things like that, but sometimes I do, and it helps to be able to sort of chop things up and see, okay, that's a verse, that's a chorus, what key are we in, and then kind of have a staged approach. So here's my demo. Any questions about anything?
At At what point do you start on like adding more production stuff, like maybe filling the space? Because like do you do that at least do you plan when you're writing the lyrics yet, or do you finalize the yeah? Just tell me
I
the
mean,
process.
me personally, the production is part of the songwriting process. So I end up hearing production ideas while I'm writing a song, which it makes producing my own music a little easier in a way and a little harder in a way than producing other people's music because I have to feel like I have to live with the song for a while, and then I will just start to hear sort of other ideas kind of just happen. There's no real
Yeah,
rhyme or
do you
reason.
like what do you mean by here? Like, do you imagine strings being there, like doing da 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 or something? Like, do you sing the
It's
parts?
yeah.
How do you do that?
I'll just start to hear them in my head. No one's
Okay.
whispering them to me, unfortunately, but I'll just start to hear them in my head. If I'm stumped, then I'll have to kind of force it out and just try a bunch of stuff and then live with it and see if it grows, into the song. And if it doesn't, then I'll try something else. But that's kind of my process.
Can I ask
Yeah,
a
I think
question,
like
please, Thomas? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Attila, I thought you'd finished. Crack
no,
on.
I was gonna say like I guess if you try to like imagine stuff, maybe something will come up. Like, is that how you hear in your head? Like, what would I put there? Is that the question you ask yourself?
Yeah, I think it's the brain. I keep hearing that the brain wants to solve problems. So when I hear an unfinished song, it poses a problem for my brain, and I think it tries to solve it. And I think that probably comes out of solving it a few times until your brain is like, oh, I have to solve this. And so it just becomes like, it's like just like you have a day of work and then you solve the problem the next morning in the shower, not willingly. And that's sort of what happens to me with music production.
Thanks.
Can I ask you a question, please, Thomas? You said about with the guitar that you brought it down by two half steps in
Yeah.
Logic.
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
Super simple. So you just select the audio file and then you open up this panel over here, which I think is that guy. And there's a transpose button right here. Oh, am I still sharing? Yeah. Can you see it? Right there.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't
You
realize
can
you could do that with
you can
audio
see
as
how
well.
it's -2. You can go, it's got presets, but you can just click it and drag it and it'll go any number of presets. And
Yeah.
then if you're in between, you can do fine tune and get you in between.
Oh, wicked. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't realize you could do that on audio.
Super
Amazing.
cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a lyric template or song template that is handy for kind of plotting out your song. And you don't have to use it, but it can be very useful if you get stuck, especially people that have troubles with second verses, for example. This is a really good tool. But I'm just going to share my screen and we'll talk about it in detail. Okay, so this is the template. Why it's useful, if you can kind of map out either in your brain or on paper or digitally what this is, where your song wants to go emotionally, you'll find that lyrics will become more natural when you go to write them, and they will also follow the themes that you've set out already, which usually makes for a better listening experience. So first of all, the general process I usually take here is maybe I've come with a lyrical idea like a title. I might have thought of that. Usually I have some impetus before starting this template, so I kind of don't start with a blank page, but you certainly can start with a blank page. If I have a title or a fragment of a lyric, I will write it up here. Uh, and then I will spend 10 minutes free writing on that idea. I'm sure most of you are aware of what free writing is, but I like to do free writing with something that I call scene writing, which is really free writing with a purpose in the back of your mind. So the idea is that you're never taking your fingers off the keyboard. You're constantly constantly writing, and you're not letting your judgmental brain in. That's what free writing is. And then scene writing on top of that is just having a kind of background guidance to your free writing, which is, so it gives a little bit of a direction and has some action in it. So the problem with like general free writing is that we can often fall into like just describing things. And while like list songs are okay, you know, like there's plenty of good list songs, which is just one thing after another list of things. Usually we want to trigger more emotions in our listener, and to do that we want to be storytelling. So to do that we usually want to have some action in our songs. So the scene writing enables that. So we have we try to write to a scene. So you can imagine a scene. So you just say I come up with the title, I don't know, Gold in the Fire. And then I might think, what is a scene that could be talking about gold in the fire? Well, it could be, well, let's think. It says a fire, gold. Anyone can shout out if they've got an idea.
Driving into the sunset.
Driving, perfect. Okay, but I want I into the sunset, but I want some action now. So what is driving into the sunset plus action? Like where I want to add some drama to that. So maybe driving into the sunset and my car starts to melt. Right. So then I have something, I have some action that will kind of fuel the free writing and hopefully give me more doing words. And then I will extract that into like a phrase pool. I'll write for 10 minutes and then extract some interesting words that come, like usually there's a handful of lyrics or a handful of phrases at least, or words that come out of that, and I extract them into a phrase pool. And so then I have a bunch of lyrics here, potential lyrics here, that I can then go into theming the rest of the song. And very quickly, let's talk about what this thing means. So theme, tell, theme, show, and lyric. Once I have like a bunch of text that has come out of my brain and some phrases that are nice, that I like, I might want to decide what the actual global theme is. Something, just say what it is. Don't try and use metaphors for a global theme. Just say what it is in clear, plain English. Once you have that, every section, you don't have to do this. As I said, there are songs that don't do this. There are songs that are just vibe, right? That don't actually tell stories, they just vibe. But a lot of songs will progress a story. So how do we progress a story while maintaining a theme? We write out the global theme, and then we look for angles on that theme for every section. So what's Amy's theme? I'm just going to steal Amy's theme. So this is the global theme. And usually the global theme is going to be what the chorus is. So that is by default, unless I've got any better ideas, that is going to be the thing for the chorus. And then we can kind of work backwards is to what's an angle on that for a verse? What's an angle on that for a pre-chorus? Anyone other than Amy have any suggestions for what could be an angle on that? Like, how could we kind of not twist it necessarily, although that's one option, but maybe there's a more kind of micro view, or maybe there's a there's kind of part of a story. Like, how did we get there? Like, how letting things go, what is the thing? Letting go of how you think things should be. So maybe there's something that leads into that theme. Anyone, please feel free to come off mute and share an idea for a verse or a pre.
About holding tighter before.
holding tighter. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, maybe the verse is yeah, exactly, about holding tight. So I'm holding too tight to whatever. Yeah, we can get specific. So maybe my relationship. And then anyway, so that's just that's like an overview of what telling the theme is. So then in verse, this is a great solution for people that get stuck on verse 2, because if you have that as a verse 1 theme, then verse 2, usually it's reasonably straightforward to come up with a theme that works, that will progress. So then the idea is that you're looking at this theme and you're thinking, okay, that's what I want to say, like that's what it needs to say, but how do I show that? Because our natural instinct as communicators is to like tell how it should be, like this is how it should be. But as creators, as a lyricist, we usually want to be demonstrating that with, not always with visuals. It still can be natural conversational language. But you know what, for example, so here's 2 examples. For I'm holding on too tight to my relationship. What does that look like? I can, of course, pull in phrases from my free writing as well. That might help. But what might that look like? It might look like, what does someone say that is holding on too tight? Someone that's holding on too tight might say, I don't like it when you're with your friends, or I need to be with you all the time. That's the kind of language that people might say. I mean, obviously this is my language, your language might be completely different. Or we could say, what does that look like? It can be metaphorical or not. But what does someone that's holding on too tight look like? Something, I'm thinking of something that is being constrained. So maybe maybe there's like a net or something. Maybe there's a net. I might at this point I might kind of go through list words. Nets, I don't know, even shopping bags. Anyway, that's the idea. Anyway, that is a very quick overview of writing from theme. I wanted to say it in the whole group because I will be touching on these when we go into our individual groups in a minute. But before we do that, any questions on writing from theme? So I'm just going to talk a little bit about velocity and about swing and about splice first. So would anyone like to give me a definition of what velocity is and how it's different from volume?
Is it the force?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. The
I never
force.
get 'em right.
So it comes from like it comes from how hard you're hitting the string or the drum or whatever. So when we have musical instruments, we're usually we're tactile with them. And for example, with the guitar, we're using our right hand, if we're right-handed, to apply force to the strings. And the strings will react differently depending on how much force we put into our right hand. And it is related to volume. So what happens is the volume does usually go up. Like the harder we go without the more force we use, the louder the volume comes out of the guitar. But that's not all that changes, and that's why we use the term velocity when we're talking about MIDI information, because if you just play a guitar really, really quietly and then you turn up the volume, it's going to sound different than if you hit the guitar with force. So even if you're level matching those 2 picks, like a really soft pick and a really hard pick, even if you level match them, they're going to sound remarkably different because of the velocity that's that's triggering a different resonance, and all sorts of things in a guitar or in drums, for example. So why does that matter? We can kind of fake velocity, but usually our ears are pretty good at hearing when things are faked like that. So we're used to hearing like a drum, like if someone's hitting a hi-hat on a drum, we're used to hearing that when it's low volume, the timbre of the drum is different. So that's why, for example, in MIDI drum kits, they'll have lots of samples, maybe 20 or 50 samples per each hit for for the outcome to be a different sample depending on how hard you hit it. Does that make sense? I'm saying all this just to kind of give you a background on why velocity matters. That's part of why velocity matters. The other part is that velocity equals movement in the human body. We're programmed to feel movement when we hear a change in velocity, especially when it's a consistent one. So here, okay, so that is a hi-hat. People can hear that, right? That is a hi-hat with all the velocities being the same. And you can see, if I pull up the velocity window, you can see they're all the same. It doesn't sound bad. Like this is a good drum kit. It's a realistic drum kit, but it doesn't move us. This one here, the good boy in green, has what's called a heavy common velocity. So this is an 8th note pattern. So the velocity on the first one is, I don't know, what is that, 100? And then this next one is a lot less. Let's see what it is, like 70, then 100, and then 50. So the result is that it makes a more groovy pattern. It takes a little while to understand what's going on and to really feel it. But if you play around with this yourself, you will feel that this is actually moving you more. Any questions on that? Any thoughts on that?
Wait, how do we change the velocity again?
Yeah. Good question. Good question. Okay, so if we double click on the whatever this MIDI is, we'll get this piano roll thing here. We can if we right click on all of these elements, we can change the velocity by default. That's the velocity. See the velocity moving in the left on the left there. That's one way to do it. So we can do it like that, or we can actually, if you play it in yourself on a keyboard, you'll be able to hit softer and harder, and you'll get velocity. Or you can press A on your keyboard, and it will bring up the velocity editor. Well, actually, this is what's called the MIDI automation editor. By default, it goes to velocity, but you could automate lots of things. But here is the you can actually just drag these up and down here. Right, so this is what's called a heavy CVC, heavy common velocity curve. If I altered this to have the off notes be more of the accent, it's going to create what's called a light CVC, and it sounds a bit like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3. So the accents are on the 2 and 4, and that has a result of moving us more backwards. And why I'm telling you all this, because we are going to use splice. If you are going to use splice, it's difficult to match grooves, one groove with another groove, if you don't understand how the groove is moving you. So what velocity curve that groove has. So yes, try and when we're going through splice, we'll do that in a minute. You'll see that some grooves will have a light CVC where it's pushing you back, and some will have a heavy one where it's pushing you forward on the on beats. And the last thing I want to talk about is swing. So what is swing? The 5-minute tour of swing is so this is a non-swung groove. This thing down here is just the hi-hat we played it before. And swing is leaning more into the triplets of each 8th note or 16th note, but these are 8th notes. So a triplet, these are 1, 2, 3, these are 4 triplets on the on beats. Yeah, I need to turn that volume up. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear that? Where it's being marked? I might just turn that. Maybe it's a bit, because like that's a bit fast. It's too fast to hear the triplets. $140 beats. Everyone's sending in tracks with really high tempos. Exciting. Let's go. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right. Now there's swing is a fuzzy metric, meaning that there it's the 8th notes live somewhere between where we're pushing back the 2nd 8th note to as far as the last triplet of the 8th note. So but swing can live anywhere between where it, so straight would be exactly on the beat like you're hearing. Let me play that again. What straight is. Or we can take the 2nd 8th notes and move them as far back as the last triplet. So this is a kind of a lot to grasp right now, I understand, but let's just have a listen to that. So that is full swing, or otherwise known as shuffle. But we can change this to anywhere between. So maybe we don't want it completely shuffled. We want it like just a little bit of swing. And this is what's important when you're listening to grooves on splice, is to hear if you've got a swung groove, you definitely want to keep that. You don't want to be changing it up to a straight groove. Like that will just ruin people's vibe. So if you're looking at it, if you feel if you're using a beat that is swung, where you can hear that it's not straight. So again, the difference between straight and swung is this. This is straight. Now I'm going to move it to swung. Does that make sense? Cool. Massive hit Espresso has two melodic loops straight out of splice in it. So don't worry too much about the haters, splice haters. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say, and I'll work through. You'll see when I go through everyone's songs. You'll just see how splice works, and we can talk about if any questions come up about splice. We'll talk about that as they come up.
So I am going to give you a slice into a much larger topic, and the topic is how we construct chords, basically, and that has a lot of sort of dependencies on, chords come from scales, scales come from the circle of fifths. We're not going to get into any of that. Instead, we're going to get into something just really practical so that you can have something to use. But should you decide to study with us further, you'll have, through the course of the months, a very thorough understanding of all of this, I dare say theory, but I don't want to say theory in such a manner that implies that it is a strict set of rules that you are either doing musicking right or wrong. My advocacy towards theory is defended just by the means of communication. So really, theory is just a way for musicians to be able to communicate. And in Nashville, there is a system of communication that they call the Nashville system, and it is a way for the musicians to shout out chords to each other, especially in sessions, because often they'll do 2 or 3 sessions in a day. And the reason that they can walk into a room and start playing something is because the songwriter can describe to them what chords make up the song, and they're able to go, oh, okay, that's that chord, and I can play that chord, yada, yada. So I just want to preface this discussion with that, but let's get into just, I made a little PDF that we will share with you guys. All right, here we go. So this is a one-sheeter, and the idea behind this sheet is this top section on the left-hand side with 1 in the circle. These are all of the keys that exist in modern Western music. And we're going to strictly be talking about major keys today. There are minor keys. There are, in fact, several minor keys. There are, in fact, additional keys that go outside of Western music. But for now, we'll be talking about major scales. And by major, it means that it's got sort of the happy sound that you associate with sort of most pop music. So basically, how to read this. So basically, the 1 is the root of the key that you're in. So this top row is the key of C, C major. And the notes that make up C major are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, which would go like this. So that's our C major scale, okay? And then as we go down, we, C sharp, D, E flat, E, F, and these are just equivalent, they have the same sound, the same sort of major sound, but they're in a different key, okay? And the reason why this is out here floating, this is just a repeat of these first 3 columns, and we'll get to why that is the case. So kind of skipping over like why we care about scales, let's just talk about chords, because I think the most important thing for us as songwriters, especially when we start to talk to musicians and producers, is to be able to describe what chords make up our song, right? So how do you build a chord? What does a chord consist of? By definition, a chord is built up by a series of thirds, okay? What's a third? A third is literally if you read through a scale and you skip every other note, you're looking at thirds. So for instance, if I start on C and I skip D and I go to E, C and E are thirds. That's a third. If I start from E and I skip F and I go to G, those are thirds. So if I want to build a C major scale, and the name of the chord is the root of the chord. So by building a C major scale, we're starting on the note C. So you would start on C, skip D, go to E, skip F, and go to G. That's our C major scale, okay? We can do that from any of these starting points in the scale. We can start from D, That's our D scale. And here's our E scale. Okay? So from any point in the scale, we can skip every other note, and then we're building a chord from those notes. And 50% chance that if you write a song and it sounds like it's in a sort of happy scale, you can likely describe most of the chords using this method, okay? So the first challenge is to figure out what key your song is in. That's kind of outside of the scope of this, but basically it's the note that feels like it's the most home, you know, which is sort of abstract way of describing it, but it feels like this is kind of like our home base. So, but we'll get into all of that in much more detail down the road. So that is how we build chords. How do we talk about chords? How do we communicate chords? Because again, my whole premise is that the important reason to learn about any of this stuff is communication. So when we describe a chord progression, and I've listed just 3 of the very most common chord progressions, I'm given these Roman numerals. The Nashville system uses not Roman numerals, but just uses the number, but it's the same. So in a 1-4-5-1 chord progression, and in Nashville it would be the number 1, the number 4, the number 5, and the number 1 again. What that means is we're building a chord based off of the 1, which would be C, E, G. And then we're building a chord based on the 4. So we'll go to 4. So that's F, A, C. And now you see why we have this overflow here. It's just to kind of make it easy to find your notes. The next chord will be the 5. So we go 5, which is G, B, D, and then back to 1, which is C, E, G. And that would sound like this. Right? Pretty simple. We've all heard that like a million times. So 2 other chord progressions I could have given you probably 15, 20, but I think really once you get to about 5 or 6, you've covered pretty much anything that you hear on top 40 radio. So 2-5-1 is a popular jazz chord progression. And then the third one you've heard in pretty much 75% of all Taylor Swift songs is the 1-6-2-5. So that is, and then so this is just a shortcut. This chart here is just a shortcut. If you want to describe a 3, it starts on the 3 and it's the 5 and the 7. If you want to describe a 5, it's the 5, the 7, and the 2. And again, you can go 5, 7, 2, and then that's how you know how to build the chord. And this is just for, you know, in case it's just another way to visualize it. This is on a musical staff. So here's the C scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And I'm just giving you an example of the 1 chord is 1-3-5. Here's 1-3-5, and then here's how it's written as a chord, 1-3-5, whereas this is written as a scale. So that's pretty much all I wanted to share. Are there any questions about any of that in terms of like being able to use this immediately?
No, I think everyone's good. Are we good to go into breakout rooms then?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So I'll put the same people with Ra to work on groove first, and then the same people we had yesterday to work on harmony with Thomas. And we'll see each other again in 45 minutes.